Good evening. If you guys want, it's totally a lot nicer for Brad if we would all scoot up the front of the row. He won't bite, I promise. Thanks for getting it started. Appreciate it. So, totally snagging you, Donna. Yeah, I know. Come on.
No, I'm not doing it.
No. All right. So, good evening. The second class? Okay.
Will it spin?
So good evening. Thank you guys all for being here. My name is Lee. I sort of am speaking for Judy, who is usually here on behalf of Scoped. In Schuyler County Partnership of Economic Development. I should have just quizzed the audience. It's a better way to do that when you don't know the answer.
I'm on the board.
Okay, good. Glad you're here. So Judy will be joining us in a little bit, but basically promoting, economic development with small businesses in the area and making sure that we are growing the community here in Schuyler County and the region. And so oftentimes, and for about 9-ish months now, we've had Brad joining us to speak on different topics, basically a boot camp for entrepreneurs who are interested in starting or growing their business. And we talk about topics such as how to raise money without going to the bank, or what were some other things, Robert?
Legal
How do you
pitfalls.
target people with, leaders or get your board?
How to get the board, legal pitfalls, the things that you need to know to sort of start the business. We've also heard a lot. Part of our session is usually we have a topic, Brad will speak to it, and then we also open to open mic, which we will do again tonight. And anyone who is interested can stand up and speak, sort of give a pitch, or talk about their business, or talk about their ideas for a business, saying, I'm thinking about doing this, do you know anybody who? Or would you be able to direct me to someone who might know more about this? And so the open mic can really be anything that you want, just we request that it stays brief. And then we stay available for food and refreshments, and you get to meet some more cool people who are like-minded and interested in business. So tonight is about you, and one of the topics, we typically will vote on sort of the next session's discussion. And tonight we're talking about the tactical, you might have to actually do the startup tactics. So all the tactical things that you need when you decide you're going to start a business. What are all the checklist things? Like, I need an attorney. Do I need QuickBooks? Do I need these other things to help get me off the ground? I don't know what to think about. I don't know all of these things. And Brad, who has started a number of businesses and also is a entrepreneur in residence at Ithaca College and Cornell University, and also helps out with Southern Tier Startup Alliance, where he's residing in the Rev building when he's there most of the time, or he's out doing events like this where he's speaking to people in the community who are interested in growing their business. So Brad speaks to those topics and shares his experiences and things that he's learned over time to help us who are trying to do the same thing now do our thing. So Brad will speak tonight about that, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop him along the way or grab him after we're done sharing. So thank you very much, Brad. Stop being awkward.
Thank you, Lee. All right, so thanks for everybody coming out tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces. I should let you guys know that this model here that we're doing in Montour Falls is being very much noticed around the state. So folks are hearing about this. Judy Cherry, who's one of the head person at Scope, the Schuyler County Partnership for Economic Development, has been running point on this. And I was just talking to Rich Tobey yesterday. You guys may not know who Rich Tobey is, but he was the guy who first ran the Buffalo Billion program, and now is doing upstate revitalization, which just distributed $1.5 billion to the upstate region for economic development. And they're very much aware of this entrepreneurial community that people are saying, wow, what's going on in Montour Falls? That sounds really interesting. So kudos for you guys to continuing to come out, be engaged with each other. It's certainly nice to be part of. So I'll give you a quick, for those new, the organization I work for is the Southern Tier Startup Alliance. We are part of the government. So what that means, in very simple terms, at no point am I ever going to ask you for money. So this is not a sales pitch. This is a program developed through the governor's office based on significant amount of peer-reviewed research that shows that the net new jobs come from the new companies. And the most efficient way to help those companies is to provide to them experienced and reliable mentorship. And so I am one of those mentors who I'm experienced and reliable, I guess. And the way make us reliable is we're actually paid by the state. The state does this because this is shown to create new job growth. And the statistics also show that over a trailing 10-year period, the state will get their money back in the form of payroll taxes and things of that nature. In our first full year of operations, through the companies that we touched 350 entrepreneurs throughout the southern tier. If you're curious what the southern tier is, it's an 8-county region. If you were to draw a line starting from Watkins Glen down to Corning, over to Elmira, over to Binghamton, up to Norwich, and back to Ithaca, that's effectively your southern tier. We interacted with 350 entrepreneurs in the region. Those entrepreneurs, from the data we've collected so far, created 114 new jobs and raised over $10 million in new funding. So that's a good first year. Shows what this initiative has some legs. So the one thing we may ask you for in the future is data about your businesses, but we won't ask you for money. Hopefully you're going to create new jobs. Those people will pay payroll, salary, they'll pay taxes. It'll come back around. And so, as Lee mentioned, my background is as an entrepreneur. A lot of what I do with folks is help them through either the pitfalls or the roadblocks that they may run into. So tonight's topic is startup tactics. If I had a projector, you'd see the agenda. So I'll read it to you, and I'm happy to cover more than what's here. So I'm going to talk about incorporation, picking a bank, QuickBooks, your lawyers, board meetings, logos, website design, public relations, online advertising, signing a lease, and public speaking. So I'm going to do a bunch of these quick hits on things that I find are useful to entrepreneurs that I've amalgamated a small group, largely by just, since we had this topic get raised by the group last time, been talking to entrepreneurs and say, what are some things, some quick hits you would have liked to know about? So this is not an ordered list, other than it's the order in which people want to know. So let me talk about incorporating. And I'm using my slides as my notes as well, so that's what I'm clicking through up here. So in New York State, it's actually very easy to incorporate without a lawyer. And so you can go to the state's website. They have a wealth of information there. The format is a little dated, but the information is deep. By my calculations of people I've talked to, you can incorporate in the state of New York as a New York company for $135. And so there's some key things you need. You need to have a unique name. Fortunately, they allow you to search for names. You'll need your articles of incorporation and a certificate filed with the state. And you'll actually have to hold a board meeting to document that board meeting. I'll come back to board meetings again in a minute. But they laid this all out. The state just is very clear about it. So there are lawyers who will try to charge you $3,000 to $5,000 for all kinds of fancy legal shenanigans. Don't spend that kind of money until you're a fancy legal company. One of the things people don't know about incorporating is you can always change it and tweak it later. So I've talked in the past about why people incorporate in Delaware. That may make sense in the future, but it is going to increase your cost. So I would suggest if you're just getting off the ground and wondering how to incorporate, just know that for $135, you can incorporate as a New York company, and all the information is available on the state's website. I actually have a link here, but if you just type in to Google how to incorporate in New York State, you can do it. And New York is second only to Delaware in the most popular state for people incorporating. And for some industries, it's actually very much more common, particularly banking, finance, folks like that. One of the things you will need is the federal employment number. So your EIN. So if people will refer to your federal EIN, that's something you can get for free instantly from the federal government. You can think of your EIN as your business's social security number. So if you see these initials EIN, and typically it's 2 numbers with a dash and I think 7 numbers. So even a similar form as your social security number. So that will be your company's number for life. So that's one of the things that actually typically does not change. So once you have an EIN, it's the number you have for the rest of the company's life. And it's the way they track taxes and payroll and all other things. So that's a federal number, which is different than your state number. All right. That's incorporated. $135 to go on the website. The next key thing people need to do is pick a bank. And so I'll give you the pros and cons of the 2 types of banks you may want to pick. So one flavor of bank you want to pick is a local bank. The other flavor is some big national, maybe international bank. So it really depends on your business and what you think your business is going to be doing. Just like incorporating, you can always change your bank later. So if you think you're going to be doing most of your business in the United States, I strongly recommend you go with a local bank. So what you will find with a local bank is their fees may be a little bit higher, but their service is significantly higher. And really what you're paying for is that service. You're going to get to know your banker. I encourage you to get to know your banker. I encourage you to go, not the person who's behind the teller, but the person running the bank. So make it super personal. Figure out not only what bank, but what branch you're going to continue to go to. Get to know that branch president, and sometimes just go in and introduce yourself, have a coffee. I would go to lunch with my banker. Sometimes we'd have a beer. We don't even have to have an agenda item. Just knowing who your banker are, because when those things do happen, they're going to be there. And I'll tell you a horror story on why. There's a company that was doing a wire transfer of a significant investment. So they were getting multi-million-dollar investment wired into their account. And at that point, they had basically no money, and this investor was putting in a lot of money. Well, somewhere along the way, this wire transfer got messed up. I don't know if a number got transferred, or we don't know. And they had a big bank, so they were working with Wells Fargo. Well, to Wells Fargo, that multi-million-dollar transaction, nobody owned it. It was somebody lost in the system, and they were on the phone with people, and they were going to go down to North Carolina. I mean, they were beside themselves trying to find this multi-million-dollar type thing. They had two investments come in. The other investment came from a small local bank, and it went off flawlessly. And even after it went off flawlessly, the bank president still called the CEO of the company and said, "Did it happen?" So that high level of service is really key. So if you can, go with a small local bank, you need to know the president. The only exception to that is if you're going to be doing a lot of international business. So if you think you're going to be doing a lot of international business, and we see that here, particularly with companies that are working with Canada, that's when you may want to go with a larger bank, because they can handle this international stuff. There's a lot of rules about how you move money across sovereign country lines, and working with a big bank on how to do that will be key. The other thing that may come into it with the big banks is I found the big banks can be much more creative with their loans. And so the big banks a lot of times will participate in these federal programs, these loan banking programs. Like so M&T is a big supporter of these I can't remember the exact name of them, but they're the SBIR type loans, which the government will actually act as a backer for the loan.
Just explain what SBIR is.
SBIR is actually it's not SBIR, it's SBA, Small Business Administration, and that's a federal program. So SBA will oftentimes provide loan guarantees or partial loan guarantees to banks for loans in certain types of industries that they want to support. And so the larger banks are more likely to handle that kind of stuff. So.
I just wanted to throw out, if you're in a, so you're still probably going to want a local bank for your checking account in the base, but if you are in an ag or an ag-related business, you really want to be checking out and dealing with First Pioneer Farm Credit, who is tremendously supportive.
Right, and so that's a good way to figure out which bank, if you're deciding which local bank, talk to the other entrepreneurs and see who's recommended. And I would get down to the person, not even just the bank, but you probably have a banker there that you say, go talk to Tony.
Yeah.
Tony will take care of you. Yeah. That high service means a lot for small businesses, because you're not banking experts. I don't want you to become banking experts, and you're not going to get lost in some big machine. One other small advantage of working with the big banks is if you are going to be in a position where you're going to need to get a loan, especially the big banks can be more creative in how they structure their loans, because the big banks don't sell their loans, they hold them. And so you may not be familiar with this, but there's a whole secondary market for loans. So the small banks will package their loans up, and they have to look a certain way, and then they aggregate those loans and they will sell them as an investment vehicle to Wall Street. The large banks don't sell their loans. And so because of that, they can be more creative. So that's another advantage of working with a large bank. So pros and cons to each one. Really depends on your business. So a cousin to that is, which accounting software do I use? And for most businesses, what you want to go with is QuickBooks Online. So you may have heard of QuickBooks. The online portion is even more interesting. It's very different than the desktop version. The key thing is all of your data is automatically backed up up to the cloud. You can access it from all your devices, so it connects to your iPhone or your iPad or whatever, and everybody's working off the same information. And to give you an idea how robust QuickBooks is Chobani did not switch off of QuickBooks until their revenues were over $10 million. So it's a pretty powerful piece of software. It won't stand up to a rigorous audit, but for small businesses, you don't need that. So unless you're an accounting professional and you're not going to go through an entire professional audit, QuickBooks is just fine. And so the QuickBooks Online, I highly recommend it. The other thing that's really handy about QuickBooks Online is they will provide for free additional logins just for your accountant. So your accountant can be at their office and look at your stuff in real time while their work remotely. So it gives you a lot of freedom, and accountants love it. And so now they're saying, okay, I know what QuickBooks looks like. I have a special account, log into your account. I can look at it from the comfort of my office. It used to be we were having to truck files and disks and all that stuff around, but now with QuickBooks Online. One thing I do point out when you're using QuickBooks, it's different from your home finances. A lot of people will, picture if you will, and I know my kitchen sometimes looks like this. I have a stack of bills I have not yet paid because I know the money's not in the bank account till the end of the month. Right? So you guys may have a stack of bills like this. Do not do that with your company. So your bills should be entered into QuickBooks as they arrive. And so separating from when you pay them from when they're entered could be a real problem. This especially becomes true if you have investors who are looking at your books. And so you want to be able to show, here's the debts I have, here's who I owe money to. Even if you don't have the ability to pay them, you need to have a record of it. And I will tell you, I saw an entrepreneur CEO of a company get fired for this reason. So he had a stack of bills that he knew he didn't have the money to pay. And so when he ran his reports on his finances, he was effectively defrauding his investors because his investors didn't see the bills. And he said, well, I didn't spend money or energy to enter them in because I didn't have the money to pay them. Why should I bother? That's all well and good for your home account, but it doesn't work in a professional account. So you need to get that information in there and keep track of all that paper. The other thing that QuickBooks does that's a little different from how we order things in our lives, you can generate a purchase order directly from QuickBooks. So if you've never issued a purchase order before, the way we order stuff now, we go on Amazon and we click on it, or maybe we just call somebody. A purchase order is actually a formal request to buy something. This is very common with larger items, where some companies might actually require that documentation. So it's a commitment to buy that's in writing. You can create that right through QuickBooks. So if somebody says, hey, send me a PO, they're not saying I'm pissed off, they're saying purchase order. It becomes quick shorthand. So you can do all that through QuickBooks, and it'll actually automatically email to the people, and they can respond to it electronically as well. So if you're wondering what a PO is, we're talking about a purchase order. It's a commitment to buy something. So that's QuickBooks. So the next tactic I want to talk about is lawyers. So you want to have a lawyer, and I encourage people to interview their lawyers. So one of the things that can be intimidating about lawyers is they're going to have some very good education, they're going to have really nice suits, they're probably going to have a lot of mahogany in their offices. They can be intimidating, and they're very confident, but you got to remember that they work for you. So I encourage people to interview lawyers just as you do to interview an employee. Don't just talk to one lawyer. Get some references on lawyers, but talk to multiple ones, see if there's a fit, figure out what their background is. And lawyers, good lawyers provide more than just lawyering advice, they also provide connections. One thing I encourage people not to do is not to take significant business advice from your lawyers. Take legal advice, but be careful about taking business advice. You want to be the one who makes business decisions and let them help you figure out how to paper that properly. The other thing I caution people against is going for cheap lawyers. I would not say to pick your lawyer based on their fee. And it's been my experience, it's actually, a high hourly rate does not equal a high invoice. I actually like lawyers who charge a lot because that means they have a lot of business and they don't need to stick you with a whole lot of time. And they can be incredibly efficient. So to give you a level set, it's not uncommon at this point for a good lawyer to charge $600 an hour. That is a very big number. But they charge in 6-minute increments. If they can knock your thing out quickly, they may just invoice you for 12 minutes. That may be a large number on a minute basis, but what the good lawyers are doing is they have a catalog of documents. So they're not creating documents from scratch. They're going to pull from their catalog of documents